I am a 27-year-old female living with my parents. I have a job and have been assisting them by paying rent and buying groceries. My brother, who is married with 2 children, a toddler and a newborn, recently lost his job. He asked my parents if he could move back in until he gets back on his feet. Consequently, my parents informed me that I would need to vacate the basement suite and move into my mom's small hobby room to accommodate my brother and his family. I disagreed with this arrangement, but they insisted, citing it's their house and their rules. I don't know much. Everything in the suite, including my bed, belongs to them. I packed up my clothes and laptop and continued with my usual routine of working out of town for 14 days, followed by 7 days off. During my work period, I booked an all-inclusive vacation for my week off, which was more economical than the rent and food at my parents' house. I informed my parents of my plans, and they were agreeable. However, a few days later, they began texting me, inquiring about the rent and grocery money. I clarified that since I had moved out and was not living or eating there, I wouldn't be contributing financially. This upset them, as they were relying on my contributions to support my brother. They accused me of moving out without notice, to which I responded that they had essentially given away my living space, absolving me of any obligations. I inquired about the financial arrangements with my brother, noting that I had been paying them $1,800 a month for the basement suite rent and food, despite being home for a maximum of 14 days a month, often less. My brother called, labeling me as selfish for not supporting him. He justified his lack of financial support to our parents when he was employed, saying he needed the money for his family. He proposed that if I returned, he and his family would move upstairs, allowing me back into my space. However, I had calculated that staying at all-inclusives, which includes accommodation, maid service, food, alcohol, and entertainment, costs 2/3 of what I was paying my parents, plus I avoid Edmonton's harsh winters when not working. I sent my parents $500 to aid with groceries and then proceeded to the beach. Many relatives, including my parents, brother, his wife, and others, have criticized me, saying I am foolish for abandoning them in their time of need. I believe I shouldn't have to pay if I'm not there. So am I wrong for moving out after my parents told me to relinquish my space to my brother? You and your family are not in the wrong. Your parents charged you $1,800 for a room in Edmonton, despite you only being there for 2 weeks. It seems your family is taking advantage of you. Moreover, you even gave them $500. Don't feel guilty for leaving, and don't look back. It's evident that you're the scapegoat in this scenario. There was no proper communication, no family meeting, or joint decision-making. They unilaterally decided to evict you from your living space to support your brother without any prior conversation, and expected you to accept it. While there's nothing inherently wrong with helping your parents, the fact that your old rent was high isn't the main issue. However, it's unreasonable for them to kick you out and still expect the same amount in rent and groceries. Honestly, it's healthier for you to be on your own. Charging $1,800 for 2 weeks is excessive for a basement suite. Opai's parents overcharged her for rent, then displaced her to a small room to accommodate their son, expecting her to tolerate it. They clearly haven't understood the saying, "Don't bite the hand that feeds you." In this case, they mauled the hand that fed them. The family wanted an easy $1,800 and the flexibility to place Opie wherever they wanted. And let's not forget the implied babysitting duties. Her parents raised her and her brother, and her sister-in-law is exhausted and needs help on demand. Opie, you didn't agree to subsidize your entire family on your salary while staying in a tiny hobby room and babysitting your nieces and nephews, plus covering food. That's just extra ridiculous. Good on you for moving out and finding a much better, all-inclusive, warmer accommodation with a few margaritas thrown in. Regarding your relationship with Jack, it seems you've been together for 2 years, but live separately due to the kids, as you want to be sure before uprooting them. You have 2 young teen sons and 1 tween daughter, while he has 1 young teen daughter. You spend weekends together twice a month. And so far, there haven't been any significant issues, aside from a few petty arguments between the girls. You spend around $1,000 a month on food, covering yourself, your kids, plus Jack and his daughter for the 2 monthly visits. You do a lot of meal prep and couponing. Last month, your mother asked you and your kids to help her move out of her home in Louisiana into a 50-plus community. To ensure your house remained occupied during your absence, to keep the dehumidifiers and everything running smoothly due to huge moisture issues, you asked Jack and his daughter if they wanted to stay at your place for 2 weeks. I was unsure about the time frame, but I knew the drive alone would take 2 days there and 2 days back. Jack agreed to house sit. I did my monthly shopping before leaving and spent $1,092. I told them they could have some of my food while we were gone, so perhaps this is partly my fault. However, we returned 2 days ago, 4 days earlier than expected, and found my house practically in ruin. There were dirty dishes on the counters and table, dirty clothes throughout the living room and bedrooms, including mine and my daughter's, where they slept. I keep my house clean, having grown up in a hoarder's house, so this caused me a lot of distress. But what truly upset me was discovering they had consumed at least 90% of the food I bought before leaving. In less than 2 weeks, we were left with only a pack of hamburgers, some veggies, and a few boxes of pasta. Jack started scrambling, apologizing, saying he intended to clean before we got back, but didn't expect us so soon. I asked them to leave quietly. After some thought, I told him he had to reimburse us for the $1,000 worth of food he and his daughter consumed. I accused them of being repulsive, saying I allowed them to have some food, not eat everything in the house. He argued that he allowed his daughter to have friends over, and they ate a lot, but he shouldn't have to pay me $1,000, reasoning that I have more than enough money, and he doesn't. Despite this, I still want reimbursement. We have since split up. Am I the idiot? No, I'm not the idiot. Not only did they trash your home, but he also allowed his daughter to have friends over without asking. This situation gave me a good glimpse of what my future would look like with him and his daughter. He is responsible for the grocery bill, and I plan to send him the bill, reminding him that he allowed his daughter and her friends to consume all my food, so he should replace it. My kids and I don't deserve this treatment. What confuses me is, in what world does a guest invite other guests? I could maybe understand if the daughter was old enough for a group project, and the project partners came over for a couple of hours. But even that feels like overstepping boundaries. What does this mooch even contribute? What they did wasn't house sitting. I need to check if the dehumidifier was even emptied. Everyone involved in this situation seems irresponsible. When you're house sitting for someone, it's customary to provide some food. However, this doesn't mean feeding people for a party. Asking him to pay the full $1,000 might be too much, but he's also at fault for letting the house become untidy. This doesn't necessarily dictate whether he owes you the entire amount. Also, I don't understand why you would do your monthly shopping before leaving on a trip. That makes no sense. Update: the dehumidifier in the bedroom hadn't been emptied, but the ones in the bathroom and living area were. I might sound bad, but I don't consider him house-sitting as doing me any favors. All he had to do was empty the dehumidifier when full. I could have asked my neighbors to do that for $200. He and his daughter live in a small apartment, and coming to my house feels like a vacation to them, in their own words. I have a 2-story home on the beach with 6 bedrooms, a hot tub, a game room, cable, and high-speed internet. They were essentially getting a free vacation. Their only responsibility was to empty the dehumidifier daily. I asked for the $1,000 based on principle alone. I don't expect him to pay, but I wanted him to understand the severity of the situation. I did the big shopping before leaving due to work obligations when I returned. It would have been a nightmare to do a big shop amidst 4 showings and mandatory seminars. I bought non-perishables, boxed dinners, and meat for the freezer, nothing that would go bad quickly. I didn't leave him over the food issue. I left him because, after explaining why his behavior was wrong, he accused me of flaunting my privilege and financial stability, making him and his daughter feel bad for nothing. I've never thrown money in his face, never asked him for anything, and have covered all expenses for the past 2 years, including helping with his bills and his daughter's needs. He made me feel stupid, and I won't tolerate that. My 35-year-old brother-in-law, Laura, who is 33, doesn't have a child. She's had many losses in the past. After my wife, Madison, who is 34, gave birth to our son, Ethan, we allowed Laura to interact with him. We dropped him at her house when needed, and whenever they came over, she played with him. Yesterday, we dropped him at her place again, and when we arrived, playing with him, we just remained there for a while and talked. While she played with him, I heard her saying, "Where's your mother? Your mother is right here," referring to herself. I didn't like that, and Madison didn't either, but it got worse. She said, "And your father's here to play with you as well," referring to her husband. I was about to say something, as I was shocked, but then I realized that Ethan now called them Mama and Dada for the first time. It was the first time he ever said his parents' name, and it was theirs. He never called us that before. Madison began to cry a lot, while I got furious. I called Laura a witch and asked her what she was thinking in calling them that. Her husband got mad, and they began to argue, saying that he was as good as their son. Madison accused her of being a damn backstabber, and in the end, we took Ethan away from them by asking them not to treat my son as if he's theirs. Laura was crying, and her husband shouted at us while we left. I was wondering whether I overreacted. I know they don't have children, so did I do anything wrong? Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. Their struggles to have a baby are incredibly sad, and I can see why you're tempted to give them a free pass or feel guilty about setting a reasonable boundary because of it. But it's profoundly unhealthy and threatening for them to be trying to displace you as Ethan's parents. It will be incredibly confusing for him and could result in genuine attachment problems and resentment as he gets older. It's time to have a cool-off period from your sister-in-law and brother-in-law. Yes, it's wrong of them on many levels, and it's not okay. So of course you got mad, but there's something off. Did you allow Laura to interact with him by babysitting? So you generously gave her child care responsibilities. Also, how often was that? It sounds often enough for the baby to actually call them Mama and Dada, so probably quite a lot. They're still wrong and sound unhinged, but reevaluate how involved you are and how much you allow others to care for him. I think everyone's the idiot here. My older sister, 30, has been like a mom to me, 24 female, since our dad died when I was 6, and she was 12. Our mother was very absent after Dad died. More absent. Dad was actually the stay-at-home parent for the two of us, and was the more involved parent in our lives. They were married, by the way. It was just that our mother was the parent who preferred to work, and was overall more like the stereotype of a dad who works and doesn't do much for his wife or kids. So you can imagine how hard it was. Our dad died when I was 9. Shortly after, my mother met Gavin, and they married the day following my 10th birthday. Gavin was ready to step into the role of a dad in my life, but I was accustomed to relying on my sister and didn't really turn to him for support. Instead, I chose my sister. I also resented him for trying because it felt like he was trying to replace my dad. Gavin was very unsure of himself and lacked proper guidance from my mother on how to navigate the situation. However, I was adamant about not wanting him to be my parent, and I believe I would have resisted regardless of the advice he received. Though he tried, and I can acknowledge that he likely didn't have any bad intentions, I'm sure it was difficult for him to want more when I was so resistant. As adults, my sister and I maintain a very low-contact relationship with our mother. I had planned not to invite her to my wedding, but a family member suggested I should, for appearance's sake, though she might not attend. Gavin, who was also invited, learned that I asked my sister to walk me down the aisle and inquired about possibly doing it himself or having the father-daughter dance. I told him I'd save that dance for my sister to honor our dad. He expressed his wish to participate in one of those moments, emphasizing that I'm the closest he ever got to having a kid and that he tried his best. However, I reiterated my preference for my sister, acknowledging the only two parents I ever knew were her and our dad. Despite acknowledging his efforts, I maintained that I never wanted him to be my parent. He felt it was unfair to deny him this opportunity, suggesting I was projecting my mother's lack of parenting onto him. In response, I'd say your relationship with your sister is such that you've already planned how your wedding will unfold. Unfortunately for Gavin, you only invited them for appearance's sake, which is very telling. If he insists on playing a role that wasn't intended for him, they may not attend. But remember, you're under no obligation to alter your wedding plans for the sake of making a parental figure feel included or fulfilled. Be gentle with Gavin. He wanted to do the right thing, and from everything you said, your lack of attachment to him had less to do with any issue on his side and more about your relationship with your sister and your father's memory. You could tell him you appreciate his offer, but you've decided on your sister. It sounds like Gavin is a good guy who tried his best, and I understand why Gavin would want to be a part of the wedding in some way. While Gavin seems like a good guy, and asking in itself isn't wrong, he's now making it about himself. Once she turned him down, it's become about how unfair it is to him, when it's actually OP's wedding. It's understandable that she feels hurt, but arguing with her over her decision is foolish behavior. Just as OP doesn't have the right to dictate how Gavin feels about the decision, Gavin doesn't have the right to decide how OP feels about who's best suited for the role. I get it, but OP is still being somewhat unreasonable. I understand that you were young when your dad died, and you're used to your sister filling that role. However, Gavin has been trying to be a positive part of your life, and you constantly reject him for what appears to be nothing more than an angsty, "He's not my real dad" routine. Live your life how you want, but don't pretend you have a real reason to dislike him, and not let him into your life all this time.